You're off camera, so you can go get your water safely. Good morning, everybody. Big round of applause for Lori and her 5 instruments. It's sometimes a Zen comedy over here, you know, and our marriage continues to survive it, which is even better.
This is another Zen comedy.
Yeah, another Zen comedy. Let's see. Yes, we're recording. Well, really big good morning to everybody. It's really nice to see everyone and to see all your faces. What a privilege to be here. So, Marsh, and she's not on the camera right now, but Marsh is back with us this morning.
There she is.
Hi, Marsh.
Hi, Marsh.
After adventures in hospital. So welcome back. It's so nice to see you back and smiling and sitting upright and all the things that make things work. Not everybody was on last week for Melissa's talk. I just was so pleased with Melissa and the talk last week and the way you brought that all to life, Melissa. So thank you. And if you didn't get a chance, her talk is up on both our YouTube channel and on our website. So if you go to phzc.org and click on talks, we're starting to collect all the talks in sequence, and we'll be adding back talks too, because there's a lot of weeks of this. As we put out the newsletter this week, we're on the 77th consecutive week of that newsletter. So number 77, for whatever that's worth. But Melissa, thank you again for the talk. And Melissa talked on Sangha, or our community. And I want to take that and run with it this week. And we won't be doing a koan this week, so that'll remove some of the jargon and historical names from the talk. But there was one part of Melissa's talk where she was talking about the Sangha in the place of the 3 treasures of Zen. And the 3 treasures are Buddha, or the awakened one, which is both the historical Buddha, but it's also you, the awakened one. And Buddha Dharma, the way or the teachings, you know, the entirety of our practice. And then Sangha, which is, in plain English, community, or this net of practice and humanity that we weave together, and that currently is showing up on little windows in a Zoom screen. Speaking of which, the recording always looks better if we have bigger pictures. But really exists far outside of Zoom and thrives in this real world that we live in. Speaking of the real world, Lori and I think like a lot of us during this time of pandemic and quarantine and isolation, to whatever extent you're isolated these days, find ourselves occasionally looking for something to watch on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu or Apple TV that we haven't seen already, and that hasn't gone out of production because nobody can do production right now. And we stumbled onto a series on Netflix called Alone. And it's a reality TV show, and it's literally, you know, like most reality TV shows, there's something going on and somebody survives. And the last person standing wins. And in this case, they win $500,000. And but the setup of Alone is, it's a bunch of supposedly highly trained survivalists, and they're in this season, season 6. So if you're going to watch one, I think season 6 is pretty great. Lori and I started watching another season last night, an earlier season, and it seems like they've upped their production values and got it more dialed in. So I'd go for 6. But these people are dropped off individually into different places in the Arctic. And they're allowed to take 10 items, only 10 items with them, in addition to the camera equipment to film this reality show and basic first aid stuff. But they 10 items, and they have to procure their own food and provide their own shelter and basically outlast each other, yet they have no contact with each other. And in this one episode, this guy who had successfully, the show is not for vegans or vegetarians, by the way, because there's very few vegetables in the Arctic as winter is approaching. So anyway, this one guy succeeds in, with his bow, killing a moose. And he thinks he's got the whole thing nailed because he's got this big moose and all this meat, which then leads to this whole chain of events, which is a lot like life, right? I got the moose, I got the corner office, I got the promotion, I got the house, I got the girlfriend, I got the husband, whatever it is, I got the car. And inevitably that big moose of attainment leads to a bunch of other problems, like for him, all the wolverines that want the moose, that he's got to now start fighting off wolverines. And he has to build all these elaborate structures to try to protect the moose meat. But ultimately, what almost does him in is that moose is a very lean meat, and it's not providing enough fat for his diet. So he finds himself with all of this meat and all of this protein and still wasting away. Sounds a little bit like the hungry ghost image in Zen, right? The hungry ghost who feeding themselves all the time, but their necks are so thin that they can't maintain spiritual health. But anyway, so he decides he needs fish because fish have more fat, and he starts weaving a gill net, and it shows him taking parachute cord and hand tying a gill net, which, and if you've seen a gill net, it's like a fishing net, and it's, a triangular pattern of, triangular pattern, all created by knots. And it was really quite this beautiful thing, and just this guy out there with parachute cord tying a gill net. And of course, because I'm a total Zen geek and 100% committed to Prajna Heart Zen Center all the time, I immediately saw Melissa's talk and was like, there it is. There's Sangha. There's a visualization of what Sangha is, this net that we weave together, this safety net for each other as a community, so that we may all practice and explore the edges of our comfort, as I think, as Galen said a few weeks ago, the edges of our discomfort, and do that safely. So we're weaving this net, and Melissa spoke beautifully to the net. I had a number of conversations this week and in past weeks, and one of the things that often comes up when we start engaging in Zen practice or join a community like this is, wait a minute, is this real? Or am I being somehow conned into this cult of people that all think alike and behave alike? And wait a minute, this can't be. And then when the net or the Sangha starts caring for us, we're like, whoa, this is like maybe too much, or maybe a little weird, And then we start trusting it, but there's still this little bit of doubt, like, if I really get into trouble, are these people actually going to be here? Is this real? And then am I here for it? Are we here for each other? which goes to the nature of the knots tied in the net. And if you start looking at each of us as a knot in that gill net of Sangha, then how we tie and maintain our own knot is not only critical for our own health, well-being, practice, and progression into a deeper understanding of who we truly are, but it has a direct effect on the people around us. It has a direct effect on the people around us. And unfortunately, in the cynical, skeptical, secular world that a lot of us are raised in or run to in rebellion against whatever our cultural or religious origins are, we're taught pretty early and pretty frequently not to trust that net. Like, to always be asking, do they really love me? Do they really care? Now, this may not be true for everybody, okay? This may just be my own warped sense of the world based on my own experience. But we do see this a lot, and we do hear this a lot. You know, it can almost seem foreign to be part of a practicing community of care and compassion and love and understanding and support. Because look at the news. The news is not really a story of trust everyone, is it? The news is not really a story of everything's okay and you can trust it. So, just one example. So there's the gill net of the show alone. There's also a story, an ancient story of Indra's net. And those of you that were in book club at the time we were doing instructions to the cook, Tetsugen does a nice retelling of the story of Indra's net. It says, Indra was an ancient king of India who thought a great deal of himself. One day he went to the royal architect and said that he wanted to leave a monument of himself, something that all people would appreciate. The king's architect created an immense net that extended throughout all space and time. And the king's treasurer placed a bright, shining pearl at each node of the net. So now where we had knots, we have pearls. And each single pearl, each person, each event contains the whole of Indra's net, including all of space and time. It includes the whole of the net because every pearl is reflected in every other pearl. When we realize that we are all bright pearls in Indra's net, we see that within each one of us, the whole body of the universe is contained. Since we are all already connected in Indra's net, there are no limits to the possibilities of connecting with other people in our lives and our work. So beautiful, Indra's net, and each of us a pearl at the intersection where the knots of the net are, and each of us being a complete and beautiful and pure reflection of everything and everyone else in the net. And then Tetsugen in that final paragraph starts talking to what Melissa was talking to. Well, is our net, is our Sangha, just the 17 people on this call this morning, or the 6 or so others that couldn't join this morning, or is our net those people plus the other 122 people on our mailing list, or is our net those 207 people plus everybody down at ZCLA practicing, and everybody at Highland Park Zen, and everybody at Yokoji, and everybody at Zen Mountain Center in Mount Trimper, New York, and everybody at Fire Lotus in Brooklyn, and everybody at Upaya in Santa Fe, or Mountain Cloud Zen Center in Santa Fe? How wide is this net? And by the way, is it our families who are not practicing Zen, our friends who are not practicing Zen, Is it just a Zen net? Of course not, because as pearls in Indra's net, as pearls in our Sangha, we reflect and transmit everything, and everything is transmitted and reflected in us. So that makes our place, our individual place in the Sangha, a critical place, right? How well do we tie that knot? How purely are we a reflection of our true selves in the Sangha? Will we let that knot unravel, right? Or go out of right relationship, as some of my shamanic friends on this call would say, or go out of right reflection, might be another way to say it. Because think about it, if you are an intersection in the net and all of a sudden you unravel or disappear, there's a big hole in the net. Not only have you let go of a safety system around you, but you've now affected those around you. And we have many ways. We're very good. Like, I suspect that of all the people on the call, and you can call me out on this, but you know, we each may know 2 or 3 different kinds of knots to tie. But we're very, 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 very skilled at untying knots, at letting things fray, at pulling out a knife and cutting the thread, of taking a pair of scissors and excising ourselves from the network of our lives. And it sometimes looks like this. No, I'm not gonna. You know, whether through fear or concern, or maybe this is a con. You know, we're very good at withdrawing. And I'm suggesting here that the practice is one of retying that knot and reaffirming that knot and polishing the reflection in the pearl. And we have a very simple technology for doing that. You don't have to go read a book on 100 knots to tie. It's called Zazen. It's called meditation. We sit down, we stop our incessant movement of our body. We force ourselves into the posture so that we are confronted with the workings of our mind and the workings of our belief systems and ideas and concepts, and start discovering who we truly are. And when we keep scrubbing the pearl through that process of meditation, this very simple process of sitting down a few times a week at the least, or every day, even if for just 10 minutes, the pearl starts to regain its luminescence. Another way we can drop out of the net is just simply by dropping out of communication. And those of you newer to the Sangha, you'll notice that if you've said you're going to show up and you don't show up, generally somebody will reach out, okay? And that's not out of some militaristic, you said you were going to be here and you should be here, and why weren't you here? It's more a question of concern, right? We are part of the net. Wait a minute, one of the knots is undone. Let's check on that and make sure it's okay. And then all of our jobs as knots in the net is to get skilled at doing that, because we do not want to create a bunch of church ladies, right? You know, I mean, that is not the point. A bunch of church ladies going, oh, are you okay? You know, you really should be here. It could be church men. Okay, sorry. Church men going, where are you okay? I'm so concerned. You know, it was a really good talk. You really missed that. It's not that quality. It's like just being there to catch each other, right? And making sure that everybody is okay. In other words, the net is only as strong as our knot in it, would be a short way to say that everything that I've just said. Is the knot just the Zen community? Is the net just the Zen community? Is the community Zen? Are we even talking about Zen here? This word Sangha, is it Zen? Do you have to be Zen to create this? Of course not. Hogwash, right? Lori and I are part of another community over the past 10 years or so, the ultra running community. Ultra running, of course, is when you decide that it's possible and choose to run anything longer than a marathon distance. So technically an ultra marathon is anything over 26 miles. So my first ultra marathon 11 years ago was a 50K, 31 miles in the mountains of Utah with 17,000 feet of elevation gain in the ski area in the mountains of Utah. That's a lot of up and down. It took me 10 hours and 45 minutes and a number of breakdowns to do that. This is such an extreme sport that the community is very tight. It's growing. A lot more people are deciding they can go further than 26 miles. And of course, ultras, there's 50Ks, and then there's 100Ks, and then there's 100 miles, where you just, go all at once for 100 miles.
I think it's important to say that they're typically on trails.
And typically on trails, typically in the mountains, typically in wilderness, a lot like the show Alone, in fact, which may be one reason that it resonated with us. Because it's a community of people always challenging themselves and testing the limits of their endurance, but the limits of their mental fortitude, physical strength, and ultimately spiritual strength, because I can tell you from experience, whether it's mile 35 or mile 50 or mile 67, and Lori and Ken have been with me at mile 67, things start to fall apart. Your body is saying, you're killing me, don't do this. Your mind is saying, you're killing me, you have to stop. You dig deeper, you go into some weird spiritual realm if you're lucky, and if you're lucky, that holds. But there is a process of being in holes and climbing out of holes. And it creates a shared experience, much like sitting zazen with your community or doing a multiple day meditation retreat where you're in silence, but still in community. And it creates a kind of tightness. So in this community, there's a gentleman, 35 years old. His name is Tommy Rivers Puzzi. And I'm going to pull up his picture and share it just so you get a picture of one of our friends. So this is Tommy Rivers Puzzi, known as Rivs to most people, with his two children. And he's got a shirt on here, which he doesn't always, but I think you can catch from his legs that this is an ultra fit 35-year-old. So this is Tommy. Tommy has ended up in the hospital. At first, we all thought it was COVID-19 because the symptoms were very much like that. He's been in an induced coma on a ventilator for a couple of weeks now. And I want to read, and there's a GoFundMe fundraiser, but I want to read you this piece that was written by one of Tommy's friends in this community on the GoFundMe page. And when it refers to Steph in the story, Steph is Tommy's wife. Here's the post. It's been a minute, a handful of excruciating seconds, absolute devastation, beauty, and grace intertwined. At first, a scare. Even maxed out, Tommy's ventilator could not provide enough oxygen, and his saturation dropped to threatening levels. He needed nothing less than a miracle. So he's in Flagstaff, Arizona. The incredible team at the Flagstaff Medical Facility, in conjunction with the Mayo Clinic, determined that Tommy could benefit by having access to an extracorporeal membrane oxygenation machine, or an ECMO. But in the middle of a pandemic with overcrowded hospitals, no diagnosis or clear prognosis, finding one would be no small task, and the clock was ticking. But this is Tommy, and it wouldn't be his first miracle. Listen to this next part. Gently, persistently, Tommy weaves the fabric of community everywhere he goes. In his words, let's make the world softer, kinder, more gentle. That's where your strength comes from, and it's all within our reach, unquote. Humans from 68 countries so far have answered the call, donated, and spread the word. A family spread across continents, coming together to protect and care for one of their own. In his wife Steph's words, if there is something positive to come out of this pandemic, it's the realization that humans are intrinsically connected. There is comfort in believing we are unique islands, moored by stoicism and separated by oceans. Our pride would have us believe that we are the sole proprietors of our happiness. But we aren't islands, and progression is a collective movement. We need each other. The periods are hers. Our souls long for human connection. And so the rally immediately began to find a facility and transportation to meet the impossible with grit. Within hours, a place was secured and the transfer process begun. Love reciprocated. But as a thunderstorm rolled into northern Arizona, all aircraft had to be grounded until morning. Tommy made it through the night with stable stats and arrived safely to Honor Health in Scottsdale yesterday to be placed on an ECMO machine. The storm passed. For a moment, despite the anguish and concern, it seemed like we could catch a breath and acknowledge the beauty around us. Eyes up, a rainbow over Flagstaff, wildflowers on a run, messages from the universe on a beach. Tommy's father, Kim, said, "It's difficult to express my gratitude for what is happening to all of us. I feel like the world is a better place today than I thought a few weeks ago. You've changed my mind about the planet, and I'm grateful." Then the C word, as Tommy mentioned in one of his videos the prior week before he went into the coma, the doctors had been looking into some types of lymphomas and confirmed an extremely aggressive one called primary pulmonary NKT cell lymphoma. There is no good way to say this. The prognosis is bleak, but an answer has been found and a response can be given. We have found with seeming serendipity a group of doctors who not only love Rivs, but truly understand his mental and physical fortitude, wrote Steph. High doses of chemotherapy have begun, and hopefully Tommy can come back to the world to hold his little bears, his wife, and his family. With a lifetime of grit and unwavering determination, no one else is better equipped to push back against this. For how long? That is a question we could all ask ourselves daily. "35 years old and people from 68 countries responding." I didn't look this morning, but the GoFundMe's raised over $300,000 for his family. There's an adjacent GoFundMe to raise funds for the Navajo Nation and their COVID response that's well over $100,000 the last time I looked at it. This is called weaving a net with your life, extending that net of Sangha out far. And you don't have to be a pious Zen student to do it. You just have to be aware of your place and the responsibility of your place in it, to keep that knot sound, to look at the knots next to you, to polish the pearl so that you are reflecting the very best of who you are, who you uniquely are. Not that some carbon copy of Dan or Akasha or Marsh is out there in the world, but so that Carrie and Kevin and Karen and Mark and Andrea and John and Ken and Tal and Melissa and Philip and Chalet. Now I went far enough. I need to make sure I didn't miss anybody. And Galen. That each of us is shining brightly and reflecting the true nature of that beautiful manifestation of humanity and Buddhahood, and giving it our all as the people that we are. I think I've said enough. I will put us back on gallery view and see if anybody has any questions or comments about Indra's net, the net of Sangha, Tommy Rivers' net, Melissa's net. And thank you, Melissa, for kicking us off last week with your talk. You have to unmute yourself because I cannot do it.
I'll say something. So first off, that was such a beautiful follow-up. I love the analogy of the net and the pearls and the knots. It really, it's funny, when I was talking about Sangha last week, I didn't think about this idea that we're kind of responsible for, we're the designers of this net, and we're responsible for like the strength of the net and our knots and how connected we are to the other knots. And it really struck me when you said that sometimes we're good at undoing the knots, and sometimes that's when we're out of communication, which is the thing that I tend to do if I'm a little upset with someone or I feel like I'm too busy, is I'll just kind of like fall out of communication. And when you're speaking, it made me really get that that's the same thing as untying a knot. Putting off making a phone call to a friend that I've owed a call for, a few weeks because I'm busy. Like, that's not taking care of the net, And so yeah, I just wanted to say that point really hit home for me. I want to take care of my net.
I think we all have that.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
Hey, Dan, or
Hey, John.
So 3 years ago, my son Ben was in college at Texas A&M in summer school and seemingly doing well. And then I got that phone call. My daughter, we were concerned about him. My daughter went into his apartment in college and found him dead. And, in my mind, I know the anniversary is coming up. It's the 29th, but what I was looking at as what week. It's almost like I just stayed in confusion on purpose. And then I was talking with somebody last week, and I like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to look at the calendar. And so I just got the fact that it's Wednesday. And you said something about the cancer. They got the diagnosis, then they could respond. I think was how you phrased it. Now that I know what day it is, I can respond. And it's getting to what's actually going on. Then there's room. And that caught me in your conversation. I like that. Getting to what's so I can respond. Thanks.
That's beautifully said, John. And what you're touching on too is let me back up first. John, I'm so impressed and so grateful by your ability to share with this group at the depth and level that you do. And man, that is tying the knot. You know, I mean, I couldn't, and I suspect other people in this call could not feel more connected to you and more caring and loving for you, you know, than ever before. And that's you through direct action weaving the net. To what you were saying about being aware so that you can respond, that's one of the great gifts of the practice too, as we become better at being awake and aware, we can respond appropriately. We can respond skillfully, in the right amount, in the right place, with the right person, at the right time. And we keep practicing these skillful means. And it's the heart of our practice. And again, thank you so much for your sharing. And we're here for you today and Wednesday. All right.
Thank you.
If there were ever a couple of talks that were tailored to me in a way that I really needed to hear them, it was these past 2 weeks. I've lived a life of pretty much just being an island, very much so. You know, I don't want to rely on people because I'm not a big fan of being let down. And two, I don't want to be a burden, you know, to anybody. I don't want to take up space in other people's time. And that led to a lot of loneliness. And while I'm fairly new here, we moved recently and I wasn't able to attend, and a handful of you reached out. And at first it was very uncomfortable and I felt like I was being held accountable for my actions. And, you know, it all kind of dawned on me. And I love the whole idea of Indra's net and how we affect everyone around us, and not just necessarily like you were talking about leaving that hole, but also about how I live my life, because if I live my life in a very poor manner, that ripples out to all the other pearls, you know? So between the danger of not being present, or even, you know, not having right intentions and acting in a manner that negatively affects all the people around me, is something that I've taken to heart quite a bit recently. You know, and I really want to thank the people in this room, and you all know who you are, who have made me realize that I deserve that space, and that my presence is also appreciated. So, you know, as somebody who likes to not be a part of so very much, you give me the understanding of the importance of being a part of the Sangha, and for that I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And Mark, I think in your time with us, you've done. I think you need to take some credit and some responsibility for your weaving of the net too, because it's not just all of us out here ensnaring you. It's you're an active. You're like the guy in Alone with the tree branch, and you've got the parachute cord, and you discovered a few new knots. And I identify directly with what you're saying. I was always a self-made person, as they say, and didn't need anybody and didn't want to rely on anybody. And my father taught me stoicism and, you know, and all of that. It was a big shift for me to walk in and let go and bow and accept love. And it's had a profound effect on my life. But I mean, I was always the guy that if you position yourself right on the subway car, you're the first one out the door, and there is no crowd, right? In college, I was the person that didn't need study group, right? And eschewed that. Clubs were always beneath me. Faith was something I had no understanding of. And I was very practiced in pushing things away. I met this woman here who was the beginning of a very different journey. And then I met Buddha on a cushion one morning. And gosh, the idea that I'm sitting here in priest robes as a teacher in a Zen center, it's either a miracle or the greatest cosmic joke that has ever been played. So I do understand, and we can work through it all together. Anybody else?
I'd like to say something. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I missed last weekend. I had to work and I couldn't arrange it. Anyways, I listened to the Dharma talk from Melissa this morning, and it was so powerful for me because it was just like what I needed to hear, and it just affirmed a lot of stuff, And then hearing the talk today, and then hearing John, who I love, you're my brother, and Mark share, and we all, the weaving, I'm very good at silent scorn and evacuating myself because of my situation. By the time I came around with my parents, they were like, we're done. You're on your own, kid. So I was used to raising myself and doing things on my own, and asking for help and being part of is contrary action. But I'm learning to show up and do it. And I think that was a big motivating force of the book club is to weave and to create a connection and Sangha and to be accountable and to provide service to myself and others. I belong to different groups as well, but I feel like in this one, there's just such a richness and a realness to it. And I just, Melissa, thank you so much for the Dharma talk last week. It was so beautiful. And I just needed to hear that and know that, we're all okay and we're all on this path together. And I'm just so grateful that I have you all. And I'll be thinking of you, John. And I love book club. When people don't show up, I'm like, where are they? Not because you're supposed to be there, because I care and I want to see your little fat face on the computer, with us sharing. So anyways, I hope you all can join. We're going to do a couple great books coming up. And anyways, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
You're not all fat.
Yeah, so conscious right now.
Yeah, not fat, tall.
But Andrea is hilarious.
Yeah. What do you think, Tom? Since you unmuted.
No, I mean, I appreciate this community, and I also appreciate when it's okay to be a silent observer. And I know, Shiro, you and I have talked about this, and hopefully that doesn't come across greedy or selfish, but absorbing other people's words. But sometimes I'm more of an internal processor. I appreciate when I'm doing that and no one's sort of, questioning that. And I do appreciate all the contributions that I hear. So very grateful, and I'm trying to be as consistent as I can on this route. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any other hand raisers? Okay. I'm always tempted to like call on people because we're not in a room, you know? There you go, Kevin.
Well, this is only my second time, and I definitely want to thank all of you, especially Dan and Lori, for inviting us. I did miss last week as well, so now I'm completely intrigued, and we'll have to go listen to Melissa's talk. But what I find interesting, Dan, I think you and I have probably had a little bit of this discussion one of the times we were together, but and maybe there's a certain amount of us who just kind of come here with that sort of soul personality where we really seem to be pretty feel efficient and like we're humming along when we're directing things, and but not so much being a joiner, you know, and that's totally me. I mean, and kind of weird because I've at different times in my life been somewhat in a public eye, and at first I found that very weird and uncomfortable. But you kind of get used to it at some point. But I never understood when I was signing pictures for people. I never understood somebody wanting that. I never wanted a picture with somebody's. I don't know why. It's just, and so I never really sort of got that true feeling about that. That's true to this day too. But I was thinking about Dan, when you're telling the story about the knots, and I was thinking, yeah, you know, we are all a part of one collective, and whether we think about that, give it credence or not, it doesn't change the fact that we are. And how wonderful is it that all of those knots need to be there in their own spot to make that network, right? And it works great that way. Anyways, I thank you all because you sort of opened a new crack in my cosmic egg for me to think about that. You know, I think it's hard for people around you, especially people that love you, when you kind of operate that way, because I think they tend to just believe that you don't need their help ever. And then when you feel like you want it, when you're suffering, you're like, God, everybody would be coming to someone else, you know. How come they're not coming to ask me if I need some help? Well, because you sort of act like you don't all the time. And that's a good realization. I spent most of my life doing that too, and you know, meeting Karen and then being in that relationship with her, and then bringing kids into the world. You know, really changed my ideas about those things. But I can also see that I had to learn to realize pleasure for people to help you, just like it is when I give help. But sometimes I just wouldn't be aware that, you know, like Khalil Gibran says, you need to be a receiver as well. Yeah. You know? And that's just as honorable and just as important. So just thank you all for bringing up these thoughts, and it's exciting to have a new distinction to give serious thought and contemplation to. So I honor all of you, and it's obvious that this Sangha is a wonderful community. I wish you all the best this week.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And you're reminding me of something that one of our members said not too long ago. She said, I think she said, I don't really like people that much, but I found my tribe. Because Zen has this wonderful quality of you can be together or alone, or alone together. I mean, we come together and then we strike the pose and sit there silently for a half an hour. And yet in that, the community and the sense of connection becomes so deep. But it does have that wonderful quality of your job is to discover your own true nature and to express that, not to become an automaton. And yet we're doing that individual activity in community, collectively.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things that I love about the practice. So thank you. A couple minutes left. Anybody now inspired to say anything?
I will go.
Philip.
Yay, Philip.
I wish to express my great gratitude for everyone here, for Chalet, who has not spoken, but I respect so much. Melissa, thank you so much for your Dharma talk. I apologize for not being there at the time. It was very beautiful. I listened to it later. Andrea, you are a source of joy and so much fun. I'm so grateful for you. So many people on here that have deepened my understanding. John Hopper and Tall and Ken, who, when he has internet issues, it really is the greatest Dharma teacher ever. And Galen, I'm so grateful that you have been coming and sitting with us. And when I get the great gift of hearing you speak, it is a joy. And I end up quoting things that you say to other people when I talk about practice. Many things that you have shared, I end up, like, oh, this is what Zen is like in real life. You know, let me talk about what this guy has shared, true wisdom. So grateful. The thing that got me to come back after the first time I came was Akasha giving me an incredible hug. That's what got me to come back. Oh, this is a great hug. I want to learn from her.
Oh,
You know? And, I really resonated with what Kevin and Mark said about their own personal experiences. I think my own journey, a lot of it has been by myself because I just wanted to move fast. And I just felt like I knew what I was doing and I don't have time for other people and whatever sort of complications that they have, that sort of this feeling like, I'm just going to do it by myself. And like I'm reminded of this, there's this guy, Justin Wren, he's like a MMA guy, but he also does a lot of work with pygmy groups, like digging wells and living with pygmy groups to help them find solutions for their own communities, not like going into their community and let me fix your problem. No, it like really empowering them. And one saying that resonates with me from those people, their community, their culture is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think I've gone fast enough. I would rather go far. And I think this space and all the wisdom that I'm hearing from so many people here is a reflection of, what is Shiro's special characteristic that, like, we're all talking about, like, we all have our little special ways that we're able to tie knots in Indra's net. Shiro's superpower is his ability to empower other people, his ability to give voice to other people. And I'm very grateful for Shiro as well. And the people that I did not mention, Mars and Kirina. I hope I get to hear your voice and know you more as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Philip. Well, Galen, you have to be careful what you say, right? I too am grateful, Galen, for you joining us.
Me too.
Why don't we go ahead and we're at the top of the hour. Let's go ahead and ring it out and head on into the rest of Sunday.